right, we are back. It is week 5 of the NFL, and when you look around the league right now, probably one of the bigger spreads, I would guess, of the week. It's the second biggest favorite the Colts have been under Shane Steichen, nearly a full touchdown here coming up in week 5. So get the Colts and Raiders, 1 o'clock. It's a Fox broadcast, and we'll chat about that. But obviously a lot of news items to get to. Eddie Garrison, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be back. Thanks to Mark Dykton. And, just for the time being, that Monday mornings are a little preoccupied, but I'll be back soon on those Monday recap pods. I think Mark Dykton will have one more with you, Kevin, on next week. And then I'll be back in my permanent Monday rotation and Wednesday rotation with you, barring anything big happening, that for some reason you have to go solo. But
well, thank you to Mark.
Yeah.
And Eddie, you are a busy man this time of year, so I appreciate you always fitting us in when you can. Let's start with, honestly, the Shaquille Leonard news. I can't imagine the last time I've even maybe said that name on a podcast, but we saw that news item earlier today. Shaquille Leonard will retire as a Colt, and he will bang the anvil coming up on Sunday, and will speak to the crowd at halftime. I love this. Not everybody can go into the Ring of Honor, but I think Shaquille Leonard deserves his due. There's been times in the media room where we've just kind of chatted as colleagues like, man, he just kind of left and did the Eagles thing for a few weeks, and that didn't go very well, and now he's in South Carolina. And, I don't know if you saw it, Eddie, but he was actually at game 3 of the Fever Aces series, sitting right behind, I think it was Obi Toppin, right there in the second row with his girls. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's Shaq. Good to see that he's, still enjoying the indie scene, even though he calls South Carolina home. So what an electric football player, and what a unique football player. The size, the wingspan.
Was he the most instinctual player you've ever seen?
Yeah. I mean, I'll never forget the first play of training camp when he picks off Andrew Luck, and Luck just, I don't even think he knew that a linebacker had that type of ability to climb the ladder. I think it was Eric Swope he was targeting there at Grand Park. Yeah, I mean, instinctual, again, the freakish wingspan. He played at probably, 215 soaking wet, which is not, even in today's NFL where linebackers seem to get lighter and lighter. That still was, super rare. And he was, again, on a Hall of Fame trajectory through 4 years. I mean, it was 3 All-Pro first teams, I believe, and 1 second team. I asked Zaire Franklin today, I was like, can you tell us the story of your guys' first road game? They are the same draft class, and Zaire was roommates with Shaq Leonard, and Zaire admittedly says he has a snoring problem, and he was under the weather, which I think anybody can speak to. That can be a dangerous combo for our snores out there, and he was snoring so bad that Darius Leonard decided to sleep in the bathtub of the hotel room there in the D.C. area the night before their first road game, and he goes out the next day and I believe set a franchise record with 18 tackles in the game.
Didn't he have a forced fumble and a sack in that too?
Yeah, I think there were a couple splash plays involved. Usually with Leonard, there was always splash plays involved, and again, interceptions, fumbles, sacks. It was never just the tackles. And unfortunately, it kind of started with that ankle injury a little bit. I want to say in 21. He still forced a ton of fumbles, but I remember he just wasn't the same player without those fumbles. And then 2022, I was going to say he had that late offseason back surgery, and that's when, unfortunately, he just wasn't the same player, period. I'll never forget when he got cut, and, I want to say it was the next day or maybe even a few hours later, he had his Thanksgiving, meal pass out over there by Covenant Christian High School, and still did it, and I thought handled the exit very well as you can. And, honestly, at that time, Eddie, I thought just hang it up for the rest of the year. I thought him rushing to the Philly thing was just not good. It was clear he was not the same player. So I thought, okay, take, a full 10 months off and see if you can find that form again. And unfortunately, he did not. So a hell of a talent, man. And boy, just so electric. And, I don't know if you said about a lot of linebackers. His energy was so infectious, and what a draft pick by Chris Ballard. I mean, so many people certainly did not grade that pick anywhere near, what you would hope for out of an early second-round pick, and he established himself from day one from South Carolina State. So Shout out to Shaq. Be good to see him coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, that game, Kevin, September 16th of 2018, 19 tackles, 15 solo, 1 sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defensed.
Special. First ever NFL road game. And again, he came from a D2 level and still did all of that. So what a player, what a talent, and good on the Colts.
News item
possible.
Number 2, KB. Yesterday, the coordinators met with you guys as part of the local media. Today, Shane Steichen met with you. I know let's start here. The whole A.D. Mitchell situation, first and foremost. Let's start there first, and then we'll get into Xavien Howard and the defense. What has kind of been the fallout since Sunday of things that you've heard, whether that's from Jim Bob Cooter or today from Shane Steichen, that they have said about what it looks like this upcoming week for A.D. Mitchell against the Raiders?
Yeah, he will have to earn it is the popular phrase we hear. So he was practicing today. And, again, the thing with A.D. Mitchell is, when people have labeled him as immature, this is not from a guy showing up at 10 a.m. or, not watching enough film or not on the jugs machine enough. By all accounts, he does a wonderful job in all of those areas. It's more of the reliability on Sundays to where, if you look at it right now, I think his catch percentage is worse than like Darius Hayward-Bayes. I mean, think about that time as a Colt. So he spoke to the team on Monday. Shane Steichen shared that, met with Shane one-on-one. And now the question becomes, Eddie, does the accountability need to be more than just words? Where does the accountability stop? Or where is it enough? Is it the words in front of your team? Does that check the box? Or do you need to go a step further? And again, the step further would be, I would assume him inactive. I don't know. Maybe you could dress him and only play him in emergency. But remember about Mitchell, he doesn't play special teams.
No.
And Alec Pierce was out at practice today, practicing in a blue jersey. So he looks to be, good for Sunday, assuming he doesn't have a setback. You go back to week 1 and 2, Eddie. Mitchell played 15 snaps in week 1, 7 in week 2. So when everyone's healthy, he ain't playing much.
Right.
He's playing as much as Ashton Doolin is playing. So that would be what I will now be watching for the rest of this week is, do you feel like a repeatable offender in the trust category, which I think is a kind of a fair way to put it, in the trust category, in the reliability category, do you feel like he needs to go one step further? And again, no, you're not cutting him. No, I would, no. But are you going to send a message and say, all right, you're inactive for a week? I wouldn't have an issue with that. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it sends a stern message, and we'll see how he reacts to that, if indeed that's what the Colts decide to do.
I know apples and oranges here, but there wasn't really, and I don't think it's because you couldn't afford it, but Jonathan Taylor didn't have to experience any of that.
No, and Jonathan Taylor's resume quite different.
Exactly.
Than A.D. Mitchell's resume. Again, A.D. Mitchell right now, from a catch percentage standpoint, has been worse than Darius Hayward-Bayes as a Colt. What's the best play A.D. Mitchell's had as a Colt?
I think, can catch percentage be a fair critique of his, though? Like, you're relying on a lot of things when you look at just from the catch percentage standpoint. Like, you're relying on the quarterback, delivering the ball where it's supposed to be delivered. Like, yeah. How many balls can you say out of the ones that haven't been caught statistically have been on his fault?
Well, his catch percentage was a lot worse last year than Michael Pittman Jr., than Alec Pierce, than Josh Downs, and they were catching from the same quarterback. So clearly A.D. Mitchell was not on the same page with his quarterbacks last year, the bad ones, if you want to label them as that. So, again, he just hasn't earned the trust for a big or significant role on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Bookkeeping item, they did work out a couple wideouts, just a couple undrafted guys earlier in the week, so I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with A.D. Mitchell, but if that, rises to the surface at all, just wanted to share that. So, I don't necessarily think, 1,000% he'll be inactive, but I do think if you're going to practice accountability and be about it, Anthony Richardson obviously was benched for actions. We'll see, or lack thereof, I guess. We'll see if A.D. Mitchell gets benched at all. On the Xavien Howard front, Kenny Moore not practicing. So yep. I don't know if that, does that matter? I don't know if it does. Again, Howard missed last week. He was not practicing today. He missed last Wednesday due to rest. We'll see if the injury report comes out within this podcast, if there is an injury label on it or not. But I'll kind of go back to what I said on Monday, Eddie. I think what's really bothersome, if I were Lou Anarumo right now about Xavien Howard, and again, Lou talks much differently than I would about Xavien Howard. Lou is very backing of him. Where are the good plays?
Yep.
You play a position that it can get very roller coaster. Coastery. I mean, it can be very up and down. That's fine. Where are the good plays? He does not have a single pass defensed in his 211 defensive snaps right now. Obviously doesn't have a single interception in those 211 snaps. His passer rating allowed right now is the worst in the Shane Steichen era. I believe it would be the second worst in the Chris Ballard era, which, of course, extends 9 years. So it ain't good for Xavien Howard at all. I didn't love some of the effort I saw playing through the whistle either on Sunday. So I could live with an attempt of Travarius Ward, Mekhi Blackman, and Mike Hilton for Sunday. I could live with that threesome. And honestly, I'd probably like to see Jonathan Edwards get a crack at it. I that is something I would explore. I don't, though, get the sense the Colts are necessarily in the same boat that I am. So if I'm Geno Smith, I would be peppering number 4 on Sunday to prove that he still has something left in the tank there. One thing to note on Kenny, it is, I assume it's going to take a full week of practice before he returns, given the nature of that injury. But I think for the most part, that probably takes care of the Mitchell. I'm sure we have a couple of Twitter questions, but I think for the most part, that takes care of the Mitchell-Howard debates. Again, neither player plays special teams, so that I think that is also worth pointing out. But as we sit here on this Wednesday, just left practice, Howard, Kenny, I didn't see Tyler Goodson with the groin. I did see him, but he was not practicing groin. Daniel Scott was observing, and Zaire Franklin also. So rare to see Zaire miss any practice, but obviously he's played a whole lot in his career and probably deserves a day off.
I have a couple of thoughts to share of mine on the whole Xavien Howard front. People can point to Jalen Jones coming back hopefully next week. I can point to, as you said, going to Mekhi Blackman or Jonathan Edwards, a player that Chris Ballard and the coaching staff are high on and think that he
kept
has
over Juju Brents.
Yes, correct. And we've got a question about Juju Brents coming up in Twitter questions, but you have to remember when all those players were healthy, when Jalen Jones specifically was healthy, Xavien Howard was still listed over Jalen Jones, despite Jalen Jones being in the meetings and on the field occasionally during the course of the offseason and mandatory minicamp, OTAs, training camp, and he was still listed behind Xavien Howard. Yeah. That's the most concerning part to me.
I would agree. I mean, Xavien Howard walked in here from day one and was a starter after not playing football for a year.
Yep.
And this is where I made the travel baseball analogy on Monday. It just, it is it's just odd. I mean, nepotism, again, is not maybe the best word to use, but it's a little bit of that. And, you're a big baseball guy, Eddie. The back of the baseball card for a 32-year-old cornerback is a little different than the 32-year-old pinch hitter or the 32-year-old guy out of the bullpen. When it goes at corner, and it doesn't have to be much, when it just goes a little bit, it can really go. And again, my issues are not just he is allowing, an insane amount of efficiency from opposing quarterbacks. There's no good to offset it.
No.
There's no, if you weren't going to show me the good tape right now.
There's no, pass breakups. There's no, interception, forced fumbles.
Right. And again, I don't know how many of those throws I'd even chalk up to, hey, they get paid to.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens. The A.D. Mitchell play, if I'm the Rams corner, Manuel Forbes, they get paid to.
Right.
That's one of, I don't know of many with Howard that would apply to that. So,
and I didn't have an issue. I know we were texting about this. I didn't have an issue in the situation of which they were doing it with Xavien Howard on Puka Nacua instead of Devontae Adams, because leading up into that game, Puka Nacua had only had 2 targets in the red zone. Devontae Adams had 10. And in the last 10 years, if I asked you, Kevin, it was like, hey, I need a wide receiver to win one-on-one in the red zone, you're unequivocally probably going to say Devontae Adams. He's been the best red zone, end zone wide receiver in the league the last 10 years. And so, if you're going based off of the numbers and the volume, I would say I would want Travarius Ward on Devontae Adams. Now, the problem that I had with the play on 4th and 2 was that Xavien Howard's lined up in press. He doesn't put a hand on him to alter the route timing or anything. and there's no safety help over the top. Like in that situation, you have to either make contact with him if you're going to press, or have help over the top, and neither one of those things happened.
Yeah, Cam Bynum shading over to that side because Adams and Nakua are lined up right next to each other on that play with Mooney opposite Adams and like you said, Howard opposite Puka. That to me has got to be a 3-person bracket, maybe even 4. I mean, you almost have to, contribute 4 to that side of the field, given, to your point, and Adams obviously had scored earlier in the game. And boy, just the ease that they completed that 4th and 2. I mean, that was a pitch and catch.
Even just the effort
Puka.
by Howard on not trying to tackle Puka was
right. And
like,
again,
what are you doing, man?
Man, if I'm grading that film, don't want to sound like Matt Eberflus here, but the old loafs.
Oh yeah,
remember those days? Boy, I'm seeing some loafs from Xavien Howard. A couple other items I just want to get to before we move on to kind of Raiders specific stuff. Ask Shane today, what does he love about his team through 4 weeks? What does he want to see improve? Kind of the quarter update. Loves the complimentary football, and that was a huge Steichen focus in the offseason. And that, turning turnovers into points is kind of the big idea around that. They've obviously been very good. Once the penalties come down, again, 30-4 games, the biggest in the Steichen era, 11-2 games in each of those 2 games, the 2 closest games. So you could probably point to that. Sunday could be a huge Latu game. No Colton Miller, their veteran left tackle. Can you dial that up? After Latu, I think, had a nice day. No Jalen Carlies back to practice. He was another one. Jalen Jones is one more week, to your point, Eddie. Carlies could be eligible this week, but it sounds like he will not practice. So they did cut Cam McGrone yesterday, added a linebacker from Dallas that really has little defensive resume, Buddy Johnson, off their practice squad. So they, I assume, will continue to rotate at linebacker with Austin Jakey and will Shaguna Luby ever get a chance? I kind of forget he's on the team until you see him on special teams. And then Joe Bacci and even Chad Muma got a little bit of run the other week. So for the most part, I think that kind of covers everything from a news item standpoint. Again, so much of it was kind of rooted around Howard and Mitchell this week.
Looking at the Las Vegas Raiders, obviously the quarterback by Geno Smith, who had a really good start in week number 1 for Las Vegas. He comes out and first game of the year throws for 362 yards, turns the ball over once, but since then it has been pretty pedestrian from Geno. He's got 6 picks in his last 3 games. He's coming off a game against Chicago. He completed 2/3 of his passes, but for only 117 yards because Ashton Jeanty went absolutely nuts. Everyone knows who Ashton Jeanty is, but they have struggled running the football with him prior to last week. He breaks out for 138 yards on the ground, a big loss for Vegas in that loss to the Chicago Bears. Colton Miller, their starting left tackle, is on injured reserve. He fractured his ankle, I believe, so it's already an offensive line that, you can get after Geno Smith. Not great in pass protection, not great run blocking either. In terms of their defense, the only guy you really need to know about, Max Crosby. That's the one guy that the Colts will have to make sure they have an eye on, and I will give credit to Las Vegas, Kevin. They have been pretty stout against the run this year. Opposing teams are only averaging 4 yards a carry. It's been through the air when they can't get home, they have been able to be thrown on. So maybe another game where Daniel Jones is dropping back to pass more than we see Jonathan Taylor running the football.
Yeah, a lot of advantages for the Colts in this one. First off, they're the superior team. You get them on the 10 a.m. local time kickoff. Geno is really reeling. Pete Carroll's having to answer questions. Hey, have you thought about going to Kenny Pickett? So those questions are alive and well, especially after Flacco, who I think is second in interceptions. Geno has 7. I think Flacco has 6. We saw him just get benched, but I think the biggest thing, you just can't let Geno settle in. You can't let him find Xavien Howard early and let him settle in and attack the Colton Miller. Get them into some 3rd and longs. Jeanty's done a great job. He changed up his stance. It's kind of a big storyline for the Raiders. He went back to his college stance last week, and they think that might have ignited some things. He's done a great job at breaking tackles. So impressive from the rookie. And, of course, Brock Bowers is a guy that, is probably their best pass-catching weapon. Tucker's a speedster, and Jacoby Myers more of a methodical wideout. So, Bowers, making sure that, just against these stars, I get that these are great players, and really the Colts have done a decent job against Crosby in his career. I believe of the last 5 games, he only has 1 sack against the Colts, which is stunning. This has kind of been an annual matchup, Colts and Raiders. I think they've met 7 out of the last 8 years. So, my ask, like you did week 1 with Tyreek Hill, for example, is treat the star player with the proper necessary treatment and make sure that they don't need to re-edit their Hall of Fame film.
Right.
With your highlight reel on it. Puka Nacua can now throw in plenty of Colts highlights. Well, I guess he could add some in 2023. He could add more to them if he would like from 2025. Tyreek Hill week 1 got nothing. That, and I don't want to act like all these guys are going to the Hall of Fame, but certainly they're a star power with Crosby, with Bowers, and with Genty. So
don't sleep on Jacoby Myers either.
Yeah, he's probably their top wideout. So again, just make them look, they can have an average game, with their great resumes. I am curious, kind of the linebacker test with a guy like Bowers. Crosby is so universally praised. I overheard Zaire Franklin chat with James Boyd today saying he's his favorite player in the NFL. I mean, I think it's the motor that really, and the 3-down ability from Crosby there. Patrick Graham, the Raiders defensive coordinator, was opposite Daniel Jones with the Giants in 2020 and 2021. Jones is kind of saying today it's a little bit different, though, in what he does. I should mention Matt Gonzalez was practicing today for the Colts. I did think the offensive line, you kind of felt Dalton Tucker in the starting lineup. Crosby primarily is opposite Braden Smith on that right side. So if Tucker were to play, maybe he would have lined up a little bit more inside at times, but it looks like Matt Gonzalez, if you're practicing on Wednesday, it's usually a pretty good thing. So, again, this is the second biggest favorite you've been under Steichen. I don't know if that surprises anybody, but, it kind of goes back to the Tennessee game a little bit of handle your business, play to your standard, not the competition. And I think if you can get to Geno and that offense in general early, you're going to create, I watched the end of that Bears game. I mean, 3 interceptions. I mean, those are some bad picks that he had in that game, too. You could at least create a little bit of, Kenny Pickett in-game conversation as well.
Something to add, Bowers has been nursing a knee injury, and ever since he got hurt in week 1, Bowers has not looked like the Brock Bowers of last year.
Correct. Yeah, he hasn't really gone off. So we'll see what he's got in store here with a little tight end matchup here with him and Tyler Warren.
A guy to look out for. He's the guy that stretches the field for them. He had 3 touchdowns against Washington, I think. Trey Tucker is a guy you cannot let beat you deep. That's the one guy. Yeah,
he's a burner.
Yeah,
he's a burner.
The other guys will beat you underneath and maybe with some yak, but Trey Tucker's the burner, the guy that can beat you over the top. Anything else? Jeremy Chin, by the way, returning
out to Fisher. Shout out to the Salukis there of Southern Illinois. Jonah
Lealu?
Gosh, that's much closer than I was going to get. I think you're right, honestly. That sounded good. 7th-round pick of the Colts. Last year, they cut him. Raiders claimed him. He actually has been pretty productive as an interior guy. So
leads the team in sacks with 3 of them.
Some of the diehard Colts fans might recognize that name there. So should be a big day for your D-line. Lastly, I without Colton Miller, I think the ability to really get after Geno Smith is there. So we'll give our picks coming up, but I say we get into the Twitter sphere, Eddie.
We've got a fun one later on, Kevin, that I have serious questions about. And you probably understand which one it is, but starting with Craig. Hey, Kevin, given the Colts issues in the secondary, do you think they're regretting letting Juju Brents go?
Yeah, the thought crossed my mind. Again, I think in the grand scheme, he was kept probably over Edwards. Could you have gotten Edwards to the practice squad? Obviously, did you need to sign Xavien Howard? All those things I think are true. It's just, clearly Lou Anarumo was bullish on what Xavien Howard had left in the tank. So, one thing I was thinking about too, Eddie, and I had a buddy of mine reach out to me, and this is a little bit more in regards to the 10 men on the field. I think I talked about on Monday. I think it was kind of Mike Hilton that should have been on the field. Lou Anarumo did share that 11th defender would have doubled Puka, which would have been on the bottom. If you're looking at the TV copy, that would have been on the bottom of the screen. On the top of the screens where you had Tutu Atwell make the play. And Lou kind of thought, okay, if you're doubling at the bottom, that allows Cam Bynum to maybe shade over to Tutu Atwell and, I don't know, maybe 88 is 28 or 38, something like that. But I do think the whole 10 men on the field, that is a big, big reason why when I heard in the spring Carly Ursay-Gordon explain why she wears a headset, it resonated with me so much. Because that is a moment that I would want to hear the raw emotions play out.
Yeah.
I would want to know exactly who screwed. Is this simply, hey, the coaching intern up in the booth, his job to count to 11 on every play, miscounted? Was it, Hilton was an equipment issue that didn't get Hilton on the field in time? Because again, if you're telling Hilton that he's going to double, that's a little bit of a wrinkle. So Eddie, I would assume, if you're Lou Anarumo and I'm Mike Hilton, I would think if you're Lou, right before the drive starts, you want your arm around me saying, now, Mike, you've only been here for a week. This is the wrinkle we want to do. If Puka lines up here, you shade here. If Puka lines up there, you shade here. It would almost be one of those, I'm going to put you on the field last, but kind of slap you on the butt before you go out there of hey, man, final instructions. Here you go. So again, it is, I think, a reason why Carly Ursay-Gordon would want to be on the headset. And, Shane Steichen has done a ton of good here in the first 4 weeks. A ton. It is wild. We're talking about two just massive elementary type of mistakes, though, with the 10 men and go back to the end of the Denver game.
You talk about accountability. I heard what Shane had to say today, just about your actions versus your words. Who's being held accountable for that?
Right. And again, where is words are enough?
Because that's...
And then where is it? No, you need actions on top of words.
Yeah.
Again, Anthony Richardson being benched, or obviously coaching accountability is weird, is odd. I mean, certainly you could fire a coach, but it's not Lou Anarumo, you're going to sit for the next, for the first quarter. We're going to let, Charlie Partridge call the plays or Chris Hewitt call the plays here. So,
because at the end of the day, when you have 10 guys on the field like that, that comes down to everybody.
Oh,
that
100%.
comes to coaches on the field, players on the field, the safeties for not paying attention, and people up top in the press box.
Oh, all of it. And again, is that guy then radioing down to Lou and saying, hey, I'm only seeing 10? And then is Lou finding Shane? Is Shane on the headset? The offensive drive just ended. Is there any sort of aspect of Shane in the back of his mind saying, okay, let me get my ducks in order if we need one more drive? And maybe for a play or two, he's not maybe totally paying attention to what the defense is doing out there after a punt. So, again, I think Carly Ursay-Gordon makes total sense what she's doing, even though if people are, frustrated by the optic nature to it.
Colts practice report is out. Zaire Franklin did not participate with an ankle injury, groin injury for Tyler Goodson. Personal reasons for Xavien Howard. Kenny Moore with that Achilles injury did not participate. Daniel Scott with a knee injury did not participate. Full participant for Alec Pierce says he's exiting or attempting to exit the concussion protocol. And a limited participant today with that toe injury was Matt Gonzalez. Big Bama's next after Sunday's game. Do you expect or think Alec Pierce's price to go up when you think about re-signing him after seeing what A.D. Mitchell cost the Colts with him having some maturity issues?
Yeah, I guess I'd say this. I think Daniel Jones is the first domino to what you're going to do financially. Now, what does Pierce want? I think I've told you guys in this podcast before, the Colts turned down a second-round pick for Pierce back in the spring. What does that tell me? It tells me the NFL world thinks pretty highly of Alec Pierce. So I think the free agency money will be significant if Alec Pierce wants to do that. Now, are you giving Jones a long-term deal? Then do you slap the tag on Alec Pierce? Would that be something you would do? Right now, Kwity Paye doesn't look like a guy that I think necessarily deserves a second contract. Nick Cross, I think, does. So, I'm sure I'm forgetting some others that are due extensions. Pierce has been a Midwest guy his whole life. Chicago suburbs, Cincinnati, Colt. I think he enjoys the old Midwest golf experience here in the Indy area. So I'm not acting like he wants to sprint out of here, but obviously his quarterback play maybe hasn't played to his strengths that much. But yeah, I guess to answer the question, there is part of that they aren't like-minded players, but there are some similarities to their skill sets. And, how much do you truly, truly trust, where he is at from a, hey, let's pass the torch there. But again, the finances so much of it is just rooted in what the Daniel Jones contract extension, if one is coming, looks like.
Yeah, just all the roster mechanics with it too, because
It's just a huge domino effect.
Like
I mean, when's the last time the Colts have paid a quarterback?
yeah,
Really paid one, you know?
Phillip Rivers. Does that count?
Yeah, maybe Wentz, but yeah, I mean, Rivers. Well, and again, Rivers was a 2-year deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you probably got to go back to and I'm not saying Jones is going to get that type of contract, but still.
Additionally, where was I going with this? Oh, one of the players he's going to be entering his final year next year, but Quentin Nelson would be another one of those extension guys.
Yeah, do an extension. Yeah. No, that is something to definitely keep an eye on as well.
All right, now, Kevin, you know who I work with from noon to 3, Monday through Friday, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jake Query, for those that are not in the indie market.
And if you listen to said program on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, you'll know that there is a accent that he does in particular that is god-awful.
His British accent.
Uh-huh.
Terrible.
So is this him? British Jake with this question?
Yeah, I would love for that person to be trolling Jake Query. That would be excellent.
British Jake says, I've loved what this team is with Daniel Jones, and it's awesome to watch a consistent offense, but I think this game showed that he will always be at least a step below the big-name guys. Watching him run from guys and just not have the arm to throw the deep ball is just slightly disheartening. Really makes me wish Anthony Richardson could just figure it out, how to be more consistent. What I do love about Daniel Jones, and I think what will make him stick in the league for a while, is he loves football and is a genuine nerd for it, just like Shane Steichen. I'm slightly worried, though, that we finished this season in a position where it makes sense to extend him. Do you think you can get to the big game with a guy like Jones, or does it just leave us in an upper quartile purgatory? Nice reference, British Jake.
Yeah, there's a lot there and a lot that I think will potentially be debated at some point. I think it's one of the hardest decisions for a franchise of striving for more at the most important position in sports, but also wanting to make sure that you're not totally letting go of the rope either. It's like, well, what about one more year of Alex Smith? What about one more year of Jared Goff? What about one more year of Ryan Tannehill? One more year of Baker Mayfield? All of these is like, yeah, no. Like, you know what the alternatives are? And then vice versa. Hey, is there still a ceiling here? Part of me, like right now, sits in the Daniel Jones experiment. Like, yeah, I think you bring him back, but I also am not slamming the door shut on any sort of drafted quarterback, because I do think that can offer even more for your franchise. And again, we're just so early in the Jones sample size. Like, was Sunday the worst game we're going to see from him?
Right. Or is that just like the start of a slow decline?
I mean, if Sunday's going to be his floor, sign yourself up for it, right? And you're really nitpicking, right? With Jones right now, it's like, well, if you look at the 4 quarters of action, where has he been his, least consistent? It is the fourth quarter. Is that just a small sample size? Is there something there? Obviously, 2 of those fourth quarters, he barely even threw the football, or certainly didn't have very meaningful throws in that. And, to your point, Jake, I thought Shane Steichen kind of took
British
Jake kind of took the ball out of his hands in week 2. Sunday, I don't necessarily think that was at play there, but, obviously in his moment to try and deliver, that drive didn't get very far. So, yeah, it's just such a fascinating debate and a difficult one. Like, does this just move you from purgatory to British Jake's phrase, upper quartile of purgatory?
Yeah.
And again, it's not like the draft guarantees you anything either. But that's, how I believe that the franchise quarterback is most likely to be acquired and also help you out from a financial sense and a true building around that guy for years to come.
Just kind of reminds me of 2 situations. One, obviously the easy one is Minnesota from last year with Sam Darnold. Number 2 is the Miami Dolphins with Tua.
Right. I mean, those are examples of it, present day, of where you're at right now. And, I guess Geno Smith in Seattle, if you want to look at a, present Colt opponent here. So these are questions that I understand them, and I love fielding any and all questions, but the beauty of it is we should, and hopefully we'll get more clarity as 13 more games play out, 14 more games play out.
2 questions left. Tanner is next. It seems like people are already dogpiling on Daniel Jones for this game. He was never going to go all year without throwing a pick, and the last drive was just desperation. I think for someone who is missing his deep threat and a starter on the line, he did pretty well against the second-best team in the NFC.
Yeah, again, like, is this his floor? Then hell yeah, you sign up for that. I threw out a grade, Eddie, on Sunday. Okay, how do you think Daniel Jones played? I said a C-.
Right. It's a passing grade.
Yes, indeed. It is a passing grade. I did think he bounced back. There was a throw. I forget who he made it to. Maybe it was Warren. The throw, the first throw he made right after the first interception, I was like, damn, that's nice to see. Like, hey, I want the keys to the car, and I want to drive in, rush hour traffic.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a nice throw to him. But yes, he's missing he's missing one of his deep threats, as you point out. He's missing a starter on the O-line. Again, one of the better defenses in the NFC. Now, like, these tests are part of what separates these quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Can you lift the ship? That's, that is so much of what playing that position is about. At some point, you've got to be the guy. You can't pay everybody. Alec Pierce, we're talking about maybe not being able to pay him. And then what happens when Pittman's contract comes up?
Josh Downs.
What happens when Josh Downs? And then Jonathan Taylor. And so on and so on. Like, at some point, that quarterback has got to take some skill guys that you don't really know about and lift them. So I understand what you're saying, Tanner. But again, this is what happens when you start tiering these quarterbacks out. And the line is just so fine between it. But hey, it's October 1st. We got plenty of more reps to evaluate.
No, you said ship, right?
Ship, correct. Not hold your tongue and say ship, or hold your tongue and say apple.
What happens when you do that?
I used to do that when I was younger. Just so immature.
I'm not familiar. What is this?
Just so mature. We got one more.
Can you enlighten me? Can you explain to me?
This is a rated podcast of all versions. Why I don't want that capital E with a box around it for this podcast. I don't think I've cussed.
Does that mean
so far.
explicit?
Have I cussed so far on this podcast?
Not today. You held yourself back. You started and you stopped. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Now, I made sure earlier when you said Jake to reference British Jake because we have another question from another Jake. Now,
is this American Jake? Is
this Jake Query? Is this Irish Jake? Is this...
what number podcast is this? 300 and something?
559?
Where are that many? I'm going to go out on a limb and say Jake Query is not listening to one minute of the 559 podcast.
You're probably right. So with whatever listener Jake is from wherever it is that he listens and however he listens, we thank you. Jake's question is, do we anticipate Jalen Jones to take Xavien Howard's snaps when he comes back from injured reserve? At this point, I trust Jones more than Howard, or am I wrong that Jones is eligible to return? Jones is not eligible to return this week. Since that injury happened week number 1, he has to miss 4 weeks. So this is the 4th and final week. He is eligible to return next week from that hamstring injury. But Kevin, like we talked about it earlier with Xavien Howard and the Jalen Jones situation, is that Jones was listed on the depth chart behind Howard from the moment he got here, and also what got Lou Anarumo fired in Cincinnati is starting to surface already through 4 weeks here in Indianapolis, and the fact that he'd much rather play the guys he likes and the guys that have experience versus the guys that you draft to try to develop to become, starters in the NFL. Like, look at Cincinnati, for example. Like, they have so much this invested talent and players on the defensive side of the football, and they all got stuck behind dudes, so they didn't get to play early enough to develop and go through the learning curves and the growing pains. And now they're going through it now, and it's kind of set them back on that side of the football.
Are you a Lou guy or are you not a Lou guy?
Asking me?
We've said that quite often here over the last few months. That's how we have to start looking at this defensive personnel, and I would say it's pretty clear that Lou draws a line with his guys and some other guys. And I would agree with you, Eddie. Jalen Jones didn't seem to be too favorable under this new defensive staff. It kind of confuses me because I think Daniel Jones has been a nice corner in this league. And again, what I've said about Jones quite often, is not just a nice corner for being a 7th-round pick. I think legitimately a nice outside corner that, given this current situation, a healthy Jalen Jones would start easily in my eyes with this group here. So, again, for the time being, and we'll say, obviously Xavien Howard, for those that missed Eddie's injury report earlier, personal reasons why he was missing. Hopefully everything's okay with his family. We'll see what his status looks like for the rest of the week. You could go with Travaris Ward, Mekhi Blackman, and Mike Hilton, assuming Kenny Moore's going to miss. You could try Jonathan Edwards. Chris Lamons is on the practice squad. I'd rather have Kenny Moore play outside than Xavien Howard. Now, again, doesn't look like Kenny's going to play this week, but those are your other options here. So I would say yes, Jake, he should, but I don't think he will. And then also with Jones, is he going to need multiple weeks of practice? Remember, the hamstring has now been twice in the last 2 months. I probably would think it's going to take multiple weeks. He hasn't been out for a full month, but still, that could be something that you have to look at.
Okay, Kevin, prediction time.
I'm going to go 30-20 Colts.
Okay.
30-20, again, 6.5-point favorites. I think they can attack that offensive line and force Geno into some of the gifts he's given the other teams this season. I do think, a guy like Genty, tackling for this team, I don't know what to think of the run defense right now. Makes me a little uneasy for the Colts, but still, banged up Raiders offensive line, proper attention to Crosby, 30-20 Colts.
Yeah, can the Colts stop the run to put them in 3rd and longs and, get off the field, and after a couple plays versus, potentially Vegas having these long sustained drives, taking a lot of time off the clock. That'll be interesting to watch on Sunday, and I'm going Colts as well. What'd you say, 30-20?
30-20, yes.
How you got them getting 30?
3 Spencer Schrader field goals?
10?
Yeah.
10 of them?
Well, no, definitely not 10, boy. I know the red zone's been bad. I don't know if it's been that bad. So
I'll go Colts.
Can you imagine watching a game, they kick 10 field goals?
Yeah.
What's the NFL record? 8?
That's
7?
a good question. I'll go Colts 33. Raiders
11 field goals?
20.
Is that how they're going to get 33?
Yeah.
Look at this great math.
Let me look this up. You can stall. Talk about whatever.
I got to run, brother. You look that up and lighten us on next week's podcast.
8.
8. I'm going to assume it is 8 field goals. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. We'll recap it coming up on Monday. Colts Raiders in week 5.